Alrighty guys, it is still September 15th, and we have just finished priming the rudder skins and the stiffeners. That's gonna end part one of building the rudder. That's gonna end today's part, basically work on part one. The last portion of part one, which you would already be seen by now, is gonna be riveting those stiffeners to the skin. So we're starting on part two. This is the start of part two to building the rudder. Dad and I are pulling out some of the spars and ribs for the rudder, and basically this is building the skeleton, and I'll show you where we're at in the plans. While we wait for the stuff to dry, we are stopping on fitting the stiffeners to the skin, and we're getting started on building the rudder skeleton. And this part two will be this, building the rudder skeleton, and then riveting the rudder together and completing it. So the first step is gonna be enlarging holes in these flanges on the spar and this bottom rib that Dad's holding right now. Okay, we've got the spar and the rib, and we drilled the 3/8 hole into the rib. It is a little weird that side right there is so thin, but that's what the plans call for. So we sent it, and there's no doubt about that. Now the confusing part is we're on to working on some of this control horn stuff. This is the rudder control horn that's pretty much gonna go on the bottom, and the cables will attach to it to move the rudder. The weird part is there's this 917 shim, and we have no part number for it. So we're making one right now out of 032 aluminum with alclad coating. We'll let you know how that goes. Okay guys, here's what we got going. This doubler on the back side's in place and it's clecoed in. And then I got this rib, and then this is the piece that we just fabricated as a spacer, because as you can see, the reason it's there is to create a break between, or create something for that elevator control horn or rudder control horn to go against. It's just a shim. So our next step is drilling this hole and then pull these clamps and drill the other two holes. Okay guys, now we got the rudder control horn installed on the spar, and we put one of the control cables in or control rods in just to hold it in place, and clecoed one hole. Now we're match drilling these 4 holes in the top. Okay, we've got the 4 holes in this, which is the rudder control horn, drilled. The next thing is this rudder control horn is supposed to sit in the top of here, but if you look closely, the holes don't quite align, and the reason is because there needs to be just a little bit of material taken off of this top edge of this rudder horn. So we're setting up the grinder to do that so that this sits nicely inside of here, and all of the holes align from there into the rib and into the spar. Okay, once we got the rudder horn rounded so it fit inside this rib, then we clecoed everything together, and we drilled only the holes through the spar that needed to be drilled. So there were just a few holes, basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 that needed to be match drilled to number 30. So those are all drilled. We'll see what the next step is. Okay, the next step was to put the R606 PP reinforcement on, so that's in. So again, we've got the reinforcement, the shim that we made in there, the rib there, and then the control horn. Quite the mechanism. And then up here, we've got 2 more kind of doublers, which are, as far as I can tell, hinge attach points for the rudder. Our next step here is fluting the ribs, basically the top 2 ribs for the rudder. So we're taking the blue plastic off, marking the parts, and then we just make sure that everything's 90 degrees and adjust it with fluting pliers. And now that we're all done making sure these are properly fluted, we are clecoing them onto that counterbalance skin, which is R913. So basically, on the rudder here, this is the part we're working on, this leading edge top part. You got the counterbalance skin, a rib, top rib and a bottom rib. And then there's a weight, under a counterbalance weight underneath it. But yeah, that's where we're at. This was kind of confusing, because I almost tried to cleco it to these top holes, but the top holes are for the fairing, so they actually go a step below, and I marked clearly that we got the top of it there. Okay, our counterbalance skin is clecoed to our ribs. The next step is drill all these holes to number 40, except for these top 5. Those are for a fairing attachment, and those are done with a CS4-4 rivet, which is a number 30 hole. So we'll do all these ones to number 40, except for that top row. And basically we'll just drill, move the clecos, re-drill, and then I'll decide on whether or not I'm gonna drill those top ones to number 30 or if I'll wait. Okay guys, that wraps up today. The next step is gonna be clecoing the rudder skins, which are drying from primer right now. So many hours spent on this today. We pretty much have the entire substructure for the rudder in place. So exciting news, stuff will start to get riveted together tomorrow. This stuff still needs to be primed, but we'll at least get those stiffeners on the skins. Okay, I finished riveting the stiffeners on the left side, and now I'm clecoing it all together. So the next step is putting this thing on. I basically got the bottom rib clecoed in, both skins clecoed on, up the spar, and the next step is getting this put on. This is a little weird because this kind of sits inside here, but that's what the plans call for. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that in, and then we'll put the trailing edge of the rudder in and see how that fits. Okay, we have all the parts clecoed on that we can. The next step is this rudder horn brace. They kind of give you some hashes and holes on where to mark some excess material that needs to be cut off. The bandsaw has to be set up a little funny to get this. You got to get it at a hard angle. And then cut this. I'll probably have to take a little bit off and then go back and do another pass. Okay, I finished trimming the excess material in this rudder brace horn. And basically that's what it looks like. That's kind of how it sits in there. Those 4 holes go into the control horn, and these 4 go into there, and then I'm assuming they'll have us drill through the skin and the rib into the sides of this as well. Okay, I've got the rudder horn clecoed in, and what we're doing now is drilling these 4 holes and these 3 holes to number 30. Just match drilling through the horn into the rib here and through the control horn into the rudder horn cover there. Okay, the next step is we have some 032 aluminum, 1 1/8 tall, and we're making this R918 bottom attach strip, which is basically what attaches to this fairing. It's this strip right here. So I've marked out 18 inches from this end. We're gonna cut there, and then we just have to take a little chunk out there. Yeah, bandsaw's all set up. We'll do that now. Okay, we've made 2 of these pieces for the fairing attachment. So now we have to clamp them in place and match drill through those from the skin. We got our fairing attachment strip in place. It is a little weird. It just barely touches this, so I'm wondering if it's a little long, but it looks to be just fine. I don't think it's going to be an issue once it's assembled. it's all clamped, and so now we just match drill all these holes, and then put this one on the other side and do the same thing. Okay, we're pretty much done with the rudder. The last step is going to be disassembling everything, deburring all the holes, priming stuff, making sure everything's final size drilled. And then we have some dimpling and stuff to do still, so we will put a time lapse on that. Okay, so I missed recording part of it, but basically the entire thing is disassembled. I got one skin there, another one over there. The only thing that I did that was not on video was all the holes are deburred. My dad did that. We got making these little pieces for the fairing attachment on video. We got this, obviously. All of these need to still be ran on the Scotch-Brite wheel. We just deburred the holes, so all the edges still need to be deburred. But everything's drilled. The only other thing that I did was I began to countersink the trailing edge of the rudder. So basically, this sits in each rudder like that, and then the structure, and then another skin, and that's basically, if you look at it, you can see it's got a taper to it. So it tapers off to nothing at the end of the rudder. Is kind of the idea. So one side is countersunk. Totally done. The other side I still have to do, and that's probably it for today, what we've done so far. So I'm going to do that probably within the next few days, finish up the other side. And then everything gets scuffed up and prepped and off to prime, and then we'll be riveting the rudder together. So that's all good. One little tip, this tool, this is a previous builder's idea, but it helps a lot with this taper. He kind of planed a taper into this piece of wood, and so this thing sits flat while you're countersinking on the drill press. So that's super nice, but again, these are double countersunk, both sides, and that way, I'll show you on his completed RV9 here. He just got out of phase 1, so he's finally can start to take people up, but this is the rudder that we're building, the same rudder actually, exactly. The trailing edge you can see is flush rivets, so those are dimpled and countersunk. And then on this side, it's also countersunk so that the shop head of the rivet kind of sits flat and there's no drag on that. So pretty cool design of Vans. Again, we got that countersinking to do, and then the only other thing we got to do is dimple everywhere that the skins are going to go. Prime all the parts, and it'll be ready to rivet together. Oh, one more thing we got to do yet is this counterweight. This counterweight goes in the leading edge inside this balance skin on the rudder. That's kind of that little top portion of his rudder that hangs forward right at the tip of my finger. That's pretty much it. Yeah, so I just double checked that these last 3 steps and then to riveting the rudder. So after getting this counterweight installed, which we'll record one of these next few days, everything gets prepped, primed, and then riveted together. So we'll catch you in a bit. All right, it's Thursday, September 18th. I've got about a half hour to get some work done. The first step is countersinking the trailing edge to the rudder. So I'm going to finish countersinking this, and then I'll see where my time stands. I got a commitment coming up in about 30 minutes here, but I wanted to get something done because I got to the airport a little early this morning. Okay, the trailing edge of the rudder is all countersunk, and I tested it with rivets. It looks good. The next step is going to be drilling this counterweight into this rib that'll kind of be on the leading edge of the rudder. One of the holes is already drilled, so it's just basically putting a bolt in and match drilling that one. That'll be a project for either later today or tomorrow. Okay, I'm getting to work on drilling the rib and this counterweight for the rudder. And what I've got here is a number 12 bit. That seems closest to this hole, and that way I can just clean these up. It says a number 10 screw is what will go in here, which are these screws. These were in bag E009 with a doubler or a reinforcement, 2 nut plates, and then the screws. So I'm going to drill these to number 12 first, see how those screws fit. And if they seem good, the next thing to do is drill this hole and get this in place. Let's see, this goes like that. So this will actually be like that. And then I'll put one screw in to hold it in place because this hole's drilled, but this one's not into the rib. So then I'll drill this hole, and then we'll have to countersink them. All right, the rib and counterweight is drilled. The next step is I've got a number 10 screw countersink bit, and I have to countersink underneath on the counterweight, and then I also have to dimple these. Okay, well, here's the final product. I dimpled the rib. So basically how this works is these screws sit in here. And as you can see, they're nice and flush with the dimple in there. And then those dimples on that side sit inside of these countersunk holes in the counterweight. If I can get that in there. Just like that. The next thing I'm gonna do is basically dimple everywhere that's gonna attach to a rudder skin. So all along the spars, some of the ribs, and yeah. In the process of all my dimpling, I found one other thing that's gonna need to be dimpled. This counterweight, it says here, and 42683-3.5 for that. So that would mean that the lower surface of this nut plate bracket is gonna need to be dimpled. So I'm gonna have to put dimples in the rivet holes. And then I'm also gonna have to dimple the actual nut plates. And then that should be it. I'll be scuffing everything up once I'm done with that, and then prime it all. Okay, it's Saturday, September 20th. I've got about an hour and a half to get some work done on the RV. All the parts are primed. They've had plenty of time to dry now. So this marks the start of riveting the rudder, and basically the first step is grab the spar and rivet some of these nut plates on. Okay, I've made some progress, gotten these reinforcement plates on. This reinforcement plate that sits on the inside is riveted. So those rivets are done, those 3 are done. These 2 holes are optional. They're for a different model that uses the same bracket. But they say you can drill them if you want, but I'm wondering if there's more stress drilling them and putting rivets in than there is just leaving them. That's a question that I'll have to think about over the next few days. But the next step is grabbing these nut plates, and these go something like that, so that the control, or the basically this is where the rudder hinges to the vertical stab. It's so that those can go through those, what do they call them here? Rod end bearings. Okay, we're all done with that part. The nut plates are riveted. All the reinforcements are riveted. All right, the 4 pull rivets are installed. The next step is those 3. Alrighty, the next step is to rivet that rib for the counterbalance onto the spar, and then we're gonna rivet that counterbalance skin onto just the rib and then install that counterweight. All right, well, I got the balance skin clecoed on with that bottom ribbon, and basically they want us to rivet all the holes for the rib but not into the spar, so I've clecoed off the spar holes. But I screwed up my first rivet and I drilled it out, and I reset a second one that looks perfect. So that's my luck for the day. I'm gonna pack up and head home and work on this again tomorrow. All right, it's early in the morning on Sunday, September 21st, and I'm gonna go ahead and get started continuing riveting this balance skin onto that lower rib. All right, the counterbalance skin is riveted to the rib but not the spar, and now we're gonna install the counterweight that goes inside here. That's all the time I have for this morning, but I have both skins clecoed on. When I come back, I'm just gonna get right into riveting first these 6 rivets that connect the skin, the rudder skin to the counterbalance skin, and then we can put this front rib in, which is kind of the last piece, the only one that I don't have in. We'll put that in there, blind rivet these holes into the spar, and then basically just do all the skin rivets. So that'll be hopefully a little later today. Okay, so we got all the rivets in except for the trailing edge, and obviously the part that we have to bend yet. So a couple different ways we can do this. We could either back rivet it, epoxy it, and then back rivet it. I think we're just gonna use the squeezer. Our trailing edge is really quite straight right now. If you look down it, there's just a little bit of bend at the end, and that's basically the most important thing, is we just wanna keep this straight. So what we're gonna do is put like every third or fourth rivet in, squeeze it halfway, and then space out one from that, squeeze them halfway, and then we'll finally set them all at the end. We'll see how it goes. All right, all of the rivets for the leading edge of the rudder are in place. We made a real nice bend. It looks awesome. Those are all done. So they're cleaning up the rudder right now, and the next step is gonna be putting the actual control rods in, and we're gonna attach it to the vertical stab to see how the fit looks. All right, quick update for you guys. We got the vertical stab here, rudder over there. Charlie's measuring the distance that those control rods have to go. This one is 51/64 that it has to be from the spar to the center of the control rod. Or sorry, it's called rod end bearing. From the back of the spar to the center of the rod end bearing. This one is 59/64, and this one's 1.1/16. So that's what we're getting measured up now, and then we'll fit it and get some good pictures before finally finishing the horizontal stab. All right, that completes the rudder. We've got it attached to the vertical stabilizer just to see how it fit. These were all adjusted. This one, per the dimensions in the plans, we had to take the rod end bearing, I think, out about a turn or two to get everything to line up, but it seems pretty good. That is the end of building the rudder.